you by 3 hours.
Yeah, Eastern Standard Time. There was a little snowfall today, very, very minor, but it's starting to get cold over here in my area.
Yeah, it's really cold here. It got down to 70.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that. Okay, listen. I wanted to talk to you about something. There's always a lot of questions that come my way because since we started working together, but uh, one of the questions was, why does someone not attain their healing or their personal goals in life?
I can say it in one word, but I'll expound a little bit. It's distractions. Wow, we've got so many distractions. Street signs, what peers, teachers, school, they're designed for outward focus instead of inward focus. It's one of the things I learned when I traveled abroad in the Far East, was people took the time to go within. And if you take the time to go within, you can hear the voice that directs you. You can hear your own personal, what we call our I am presence, or our intuition, if you want to go in slowly with that. Once you hear that inner voice, it's hard for people to pull you off of that. When you hear that inner voice expresses your core values. Our brains make up things based on what we've learned and what we've experienced, what we've been taught by well-meaning, and maybe sometimes not so well-meaning, but mostly well-meaning people, but ignorant to the rules of what some people might call God or natural law. When we listen to that voice, we rarely make a mistake. It's uncanny how exact we can be by listening within.
Mm-hmm. And on that note, for such a long time, it was basically what got me to do the documentary. We answered quite a few in that, but here we'll answer just a few questions to get people some information. Why would one person heal and the other not heal?
Well, that's a really good question. Did you want to say something else first?
No.
Okay.
Go ahead.
It's a really good question. I like to gravitate to the simple question. I'm a kind of a task-oriented, bottom line kind of person. Some people heal and some people don't. For the most part, it's mostly they'll heal if, in fact, they'll be quiet enough to listen. If they're not listening for what I call well, it's not what I call, these are ancient knowledge, but it's when you're listening with your heart, with your soul, with your mind, with your emotions. In other words, you're listening with all four bodies all at once. Most people listen to the outward experience with an intent to win, to look good, to be right, or to be in control, versus listening to understand or have what we like to call now understanding, as in the question becomes, what is it that is here for me in this moment? What's in front of me? What is the life lesson that I'm here for? When we listen to that voice, we know whether to stay, whether to fight, or whether to run. I mean, we have many choices. The problem with people that are not healing is that they're listening with a different intention rather than to heal. If you want to heal, you've got to look within. You've got to see what your own voice is telling you. When you discover that, you'll hear things, simple things. I'll give you a couple simple examples. Boy, was I stupid to do this. Well, you've just called yourself stupid. Can a stupid people heal himself or herself? Do you see, it's getting down to the real basics where we really pay attention to our languaging, how we're using it, especially using it as an inner critic rather than somebody extolling our own virtues.
Mm.
You probably never heard Muhammad Ali come out and say, I might be the second greatest. He came out and said, I am the greatest. Now, here's one of the distortions about that. People say, oh, what an ego. Well, yes, but an ego is a good thing. An ego is I am that I am. Egotistical is I am better than. You hear
Yeah.
the difference, okay? So when we understand and know who we are, yes, I am the greatest at what I am. I was a carpenter for many years, and I had the great fortune to apprentice under a master carpenter whose idea of perfection was beyond what most people could comprehend. And what a joy. Well, it wasn't a joy learning from him, I'll tell you that. He was pretty rough on me, but
Yeah.
what a joy that I understood that gift. And I call it a gift because he really never let me do the work because he was a perfectionist. I had to do that on my own. See, it was the essence of what he taught me that then carried me through life.
Okay.
When we listen for something like that, now we have begun to accelerate all of our abilities.
Okay. When you say that, do you have a story, a healing story, self-healing story you can
Sure.
tie in with that?
Boy, I'll tell you, I think of it at first and I think, geez, there's so many.
Yeah.
When a lot of people that I know that got into healing and really started paying attention to it had some type of traumatic experience. And that I fall into that category. When we have a traumatic experience, I'll speak for myself. I would go into myself, either have a couple of choices. And in those choices, I'm either going to choose to overcome this, I'm going to choose to succumb to it, which means I could either choose to get the lesson that I'm supposed to be here to achieve, or I could crash and burn. And well, I have to admit, I self-medicated for a while. I got into smoking really heavily. I got into drinking quite heavily. And I realized after some prodding by some very amazing people who happened to see that I wasn't myself anymore. They introduced me to a group of people that allowed me to see who I was, to see where I was, what I was doing to myself, how my experience in choosing the kind of life that I was choosing was a recipe for disaster. So here's the teaching that I got and what actually happened. What actually happened was that my wife was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and they'd given her actually 2 weeks to live. Well, they told me we couldn't have children, and we have 2 beautiful children. So I wasn't buying any of their stories. And I was indomitable in that fashion. And it led me around the world, though, to sit at the feet of the masters, because allopathic medicine had basically thrown her out to go make things well at home and complete her life. Well, she did live another 11 years, but then she did pass. I was in the learning processes of healing. And as you asked the question earlier, why do some people heal and some don't? She couldn't quite wrap her head around anything other than what she had been taught in her particular faith. So anything that I had done was in opposition to that, rather than as an adjunct help to what she knew. We were just saying it in completely different ways. Now, I thought, to make this story a little shorter, I thought she had just died. What I didn't know until I went back to Thailand a few years later was that, well, I was put in front of a seer, and she knew so much about me that I thought I'd ask her this question. I said, gee, why did my wife have to go so long and suffer so long and die? She said, the answer is very simple. She cleaned up a lot of karma in her family. But for me, what she did was take me from redneck, macho, nail-bending, rough rider contractor to intuitive healing. And once that was complete, because you see, it was because of her I went on this journey to find out how else to heal, because I just would not accept this idea that she would eventually leave me. And That's changed my life forever. It
Mm.
was an immense, immense healing that when it first happened, I didn't look at it that way. I was quite upset about the whole thing. But now I see that she had accomplished her mission. And once she accomplished it, then she left.
Okay. I find when I hear stories like that, in metaphysics, anyways, I took a course in metaphysics and I got a master degree in it. And there was one thing that was simple yet very profound for me, and it was that it stated that for every negative event that happens in life, there must, I say the word must, be a positive event that happens in return. And when I hear that story of yours, that's where I see the profoundness in it. It's almost like saying, it's not to say don't go through the pain, the sorrow, the crying, and all that stuff, because
Yeah, that
we
did
kind of
happen.
need we kind of need to go through that stuff too. But what I know today is, if anything happens negative to me, I now know there's a reason for it, and a positive event will make it that much better down the road. And I'm 66 today, and I see these things constantly now. So no matter what negative happens to me, I just know something better is coming along the pike.
Yeah. The world is, I learned more and more, it's an equal sign. It's basic physics. Yeah, you could call it whatever you like, but there's a reaction to every action.
Yeah.
And depending, like when you ask why do some people heal and some don't, how it is that we respond to the circumstance in front of us is going to determine whether we heal from it, whether we take the lesson, whether we learn it, or whether we block the lesson and play games like ain't it awful and life sucks and then you die.
Yeah.
Or you could say life's a joy, then you ascend. And honor, for example, I learned to honor the fact that my wife left early. Rather than mourn her death, I celebrate, because how would she feel if I just crashed and burned after her sacrifice for me?
Mm.
You see,
Yeah.
and
Wow.
I came to realize that, and I thought, I can't not go on this path now. This is it. This is what I was destined to do. She was sent here to wake me up. Well, I don't want to go back to sleep again. You see,
Yeah. No doubt. No
that
doubt.
would completely dishonor the immense, and I use the word sacrifice, which means to make holy. That's the actual meaning of it. She made my life holy. Does that make
Okay.
sense? So she
Yeah. Yeah.
sacrificed her time, literally her life force for me. She made my life holy.
Because you chose to see it that way. Some people
Mhm.
will choose the opposite.
Yes. And so I either healed, or I could certainly be still in that deep depression that I experienced, which gave me tremendous insight to the kind of suffering that people go through. So when I sit in front of somebody, or when I make these different audio recordings and things, there's some depth of knowledge there. Boy, I'll tell you, it wasn't unusual to have a drink of some alcohol early in the morning. I was running, I was hiding, I was doing anything but facing what was about to happen. And then what did happen. So I had to experience that pain for a while. And then the other miracle was, I wound up losing my home. I wound up in an apartment. And there's where the miracle started again. One of the neighbors that lived right near me noticed that I just wasn't that happy person I was when I walked in. And she was the one that introduced me to the program that helped me come back, what I would say, back home, back into my heart, back where all the power existed.
Mm.
Like when I started carpentry, boy, I'll tell you what, people say, what do you have, sawdust for brains? That's all you ever talk about, and I was so in love with it. I was so thrilled with putting that wood together. I was so happy to be doing what I was doing. I was truly, truly, I would say, blessed to find that. You would have thought, being Greek, I would have been in the restaurant business, you know. So my father actually owned a restaurant. That was a close call.
Okay.
But you
Or
see,
you could have been healing food.
yeah, our paths, you know, are inextricably, I mean, unexplainably sometimes, if we're not paying attention, taking right turns all over the place. They're taking a right turn for a reason, you know. Go ahead.
I have to tell you that when we did that documentary and, and when we met, me and you met for the first time and we chatted, you told me many, many stories, even so many stories we couldn't put in a documentary. But what I do know is that you have, and I've mentioned it before, but I have to say it again, you have a knack or an affinity or a connection with babies or children. Why is that? Have you ever put them two together?
Probably they have more a knack with me. They're simpler. They have less programming in the world. You know, they're not as once we grow up, we've been, you know, we come out like this with our arms spread, and then you shouldn't do this, you have to do this, you can't do this, you ought to be, you should do what we're doing, because they love you. It's not because they don't like you. But what has systematically happened is the choice is that a natural selection kind of process happens inside is stopped. But in children, it's not quite stopped yet. So they're easy to deal with in the respect that there aren't all of these learned protocols blocking the simple truths. Okay, like
So,
one of the simple truths.
intuitively, that means you can connect to them and they can sense it from a
Exactly.
distance.
I'm
From a
able to
distance.
tap in. And tapping in. Here's the
Wow.
fun thing. This is when it's so important when you listen to these audios that we've made and eventually meet with me and we work together, however it works for you, whatever works the best, is that like this young boy with the bone disease, it was so simple. He discovered he just didn't want to shoot little animals, and his family was trying to teach him to be a man. He was 6 years old, you know, and every time he shot an animal, a piece of him would die,
Wow.
and he stopped growing literally. When he discovered this, and this was so beautiful with this little child, he went home, and after that, he said, "Hey, I don't do this anymore." This little 6-year-old, you know, and they heard him. Thank God.
So the emotional trauma that this child was taken in literally affected his bones and they
Yes,
disintegrated.
yes,
Wow.
yes. They literally disintegrated. We saw the X-rays. I mean, it was just, and he was such a sweetheart. You know, he was more concerned with not being able to play with his friends than he was dying.
Yeah.
To him, it was more important that he could go out and play. Of course, that's a child's mind.
Wow.
And to say, he's got a nice family. He's got several children now. He was to have 4 or 5 operations as his body grew. He would have to have different body parts replaced because his bones weren't growing with the rest of his body. And they didn't have to do any.
Man, I got chills. I've heard this story a few times, and I got chills when I hear that. And that's basically when I first met you, and I had heard that story, that testimonial. It blew my mind. It blew me away, and it pertains to sometimes when I was younger. I was Catholic, right? And I could never understand why people are so believers in the church and yet not believers in self-healing.
Yeah, this is a real, to me, a real tragedy, because the words are there, the ideas are there, the initial idea held before the mind as the reason for being there was to learn this. But it was instead saying, okay, in order for you to be your own healer, you have to come here, or you have to reach out, or somebody else has to do it for you, rather than giving you the idea that the Christ consciousness okay, is already within you, and let's bring it out. Okay,
Yeah.
let's do this. See,
Y-
it turned into something else along the way.
Oh my God. When you bring that up, is what I'm hearing is that everybody seems to be waiting for God or Jesus to come back and to come back. Yet it's inside. It's inside of us to be able to do the healing.
Yes, yes.
Oh, it's just that we're not taking the time to either study it, read about it, take a course on it, hire a healer, whatever it is. I mean, um, we're lost in the mountain of information. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, you brought up something too. It just clicked on me. It's like in the religious structure, they're dealing with protocol. They're dealing with I don't know what I say, a fixed way of being, rather than in the flow. Like I noticed a lot of the new churches now have music at the beginning. It's melodic. It's got a nice beat to it. It gets the body moving. In the original churches a long time ago, they didn't have seats. The whole body was engaged mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Ring a bell, okay? That's what we need to do. When we involve ourselves that much. Here's a real funny, simple miracle, if you will. Learning how to ride a two-wheel bike. Hey, we weren't initially built to do those things. The bike was built after our bodies sometime. And, when you mentally figure it out, you physically have to get on it and actually do it. Emotionally, hey, all my friends are doing it. I want to go with them. And spiritually, you have to say, I know I can do it. You've lined up all four bodies. And one moment, you couldn't ride a bike, and the next one you could. And here's the caveat. It's forever. So would you want to line up all four bodies into healing or all four bodies into illness? And you can do it either way. Okay.
Yes.
Neither, and let's
Agree.
do something here right now. Let's lose the words right or wrong or good or bad. It is just a lesson. You get to see how you're going to deal with it.
Yeah. How do you react to that lesson?
Yes. Or better still, respond. See, it's the reaction that taught by others, if you will.
Okay. Yeah.
Take the time to call it understanding rather than understanding. See, we're not under somebody else's standing. We want to bring that inside and have an understanding of what is occurring.
Yeah.
So, like, just a simple thing. Some people say, oh, I'm meditating to be quiet. Sort of. I'm meditating to block out the noises, the distractions around you, such that you could hear the voice within.
Yeah.
Okay. And then being able to discern if that's your voice or not. Now, even having said that, some people hear it audibly really clear. Some people just know it. They have a feeling, they have faith that they got the answer, and they go out and just act upon it. It just depends on the individual. Everybody's a little bit different. And looking within works.
Right on.
Yeah. However it shows up, it works for everybody. That's what I've been wanting to teach everyone.
Yeah, that was awesome, Gregory. I think it's going to cue in a few people on certain things that you've answered for me, and gain, hopefully they'll gain a little bit of clarity out of this interview. And we'll do a couple more, it's for sure. I'm enjoying these interviews just for myself. Sometimes it's spontaneous what comes out of as a question, and what you respond for an answer. I'm always learning. I enjoy it.
Me too. Helps me too. We're all helping each other. Just like the woman that helped me to find the self-awareness group. Where would I have ended up maybe without her? What a healing she did for me.
Yeah.
See, it comes in so many ways. It's not some woo-woo thing off in the sky somewhere. It's real, and it's here, and it's now. And we do that for each other all the time.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to tell you something, you guys. If you ever go visit Roger, you'll get a great healing. His wife can cook. Oh my God. That is a healing all by itself.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate. I tell you, it was this Suzanne, when she came into my life, was a true blessing. It's for sure, in so many ways. Very, very, very fortunate where I am in my life, and I'm grateful for her. Yeah,
And
for sure.
even besides your cooking, I was very fortunate to meet her. She's a very
Yeah, yeah,
very
yeah.
wise being.
Oh, very, very,
Yeah.
very. Yeah, yeah.
So
She's
we
an
all,
awesome.
yeah, that's part of the
Uh,
big healing process. We all help each other. We all have our strengths. We are all healers. If I had to leave you with anything, remember that.
yeah, I'll tie into that. Not to compare ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, some people compare each other. Oh, he's better, and I'm not as good as him or as her. And by comparing, you're actually belittling yourself. You're stuffing yourself down, and you're resisting. So it seems like we stop ourselves from discovering who we are.
Yeah, been there, done that, and
Yeah,
occasionally still catch myself. So there's so many tools though that I've learned when I do something like that, because we're human. We have programs. I've been practicing who I am since I've been born. So if I really want something else to happen, I've got to practice something else.
yeah.
And in order to make up for the time, I've got to get focused on it, because all those other times it was random. I wasn't even knowing what I was doing. Now
Mm.
I know what I'm doing. So you can take a lifetime of things and undo it or recreate it in a very short period of time.
Hmm.
Sometimes as little as one session or one audio tape just clicks, and boy, that's it.
Yeah, repeating something often enough becomes a skill, right? And eventually,
Mhm.
there's a little quotation says, "Repetition is the mother of skill."
Yeah, yeah. And your unconscious mind needs repetition in order
Yeah,
to create a new habit.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All righty.
All right. Okay, Gregory, thank you so much for tonight's interview, and we'll catch you on the next go round.
Thank you, Roger. God bless. Take good care.
Ciao for now.